Okay, so what we'll do today will be in a way very similar with what you do for your homework and what this section is about, but we'll do a little bit more. What I would like you to do, imagine that I am your customer, and I will propose to you a problem that I want to be solved, and I will expect you to ask me questions, so we'll be able to do the model of the problem, and then to do the implementation of this model in SQL to start creating a database for the models that we created. So let me tell you about the idea that I want to have a database for. I would like to have a database with the topics that are taught in the course. And now, let's start with the idea that first, I want a single entity model or a single table database. So let's think, what will ask me to decide how you will do this model. So you can ask in the chat or by voice, ask me questions and I will answer them to you. And this way we'll create the specification for this problem. I will stop to share this one and I will put a new whiteboard on which we will work to create this specification. So what I want to do is to have topics in IT214. That's what I want to have in my database. The topics in IT214. If you need to do this database and I'm your customer, what will ask me first? What questions you will put so you can extract from me the requirement specification? This is the first stage that we haven't exercised yet much. Generally, you receive this specification written, but let's see if you need to do it yourself, and that's part of the design, how you will do it. What will ask me so you are able to write the specification? What will be a question that you will ask me? Sure, you have some knowledge about the domain. I picked one in which you have knowledge, so it's not so strange for you. But what will ask me? Okay, anybody? If not, I will ask myself. So put a question in presenter if you have a partial question prepared. If not, I will put a question to myself and answer it. Okay, no answer provided in the chat. So what I will ask myself will be, okay, what kind of data you want? Can you give me an example of some data that you want to store in your database? Can I see? Can I touch it? So, because then I will have a better idea what you want to put in your database. I have a better idea how to organize your database. Without seeing an example, it's very hard to create a database or a model. That's why always, I even give you a table or a link or a picture. Many times you will have some kind of external help to see how the data will look like. So that's what I will ask first. Can you provide And sure, if I am serious about creating, I must be able to provide an example. And let's put it here. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, it took it. Oh, no, And let's provide you some example. Let's say one of the topics that we discuss about will be let's say single value attribute And I will provide also a definition, a single value attribute is an attribute that will have a single value for any entity instance, current or future. So this will be like a short definition of what I want to store, like the name of the topic and the short definition for that topic. You cannot see the board? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how you see the board. I have it at 100%, but I don't know how this works for you. I can see it on both I have 3 computers here, and I can see on all of them, but I don't know if you cannot see it. I am not sure why. Okay, I see. So this probably depends on the resolution of your monitor. So be sure that you make it larger or smaller so it will fit your screen. Or you can move it around, I think. And you also can move what I write and you can add to it. So if you do that, don't change too much what I do, but feel free if you want to put a question, you can put it here on the whiteboard as well. So it's not a problem. Now, okay, I gave you this information. Are you ready to do the database, the design? Are you ready to create the design? Anybody? Okay, so yes or no? So right now, it seems like a very simple table, like 2 attributes, like a name and the definition. And sure, we can do some progress here. I can say, okay, I will have the entity will be, let's say, topic. And then for this entity, I can identify some attributes. And 2 attributes possible. I will have like name and definition. So this seems like a very simple description. Is this enough to create the model? Is anything missing from would you know all the other characteristics at this point? Do you have any other question? Okay, so let's see. Let's try to do the model. If you have no other questions, let's see, and we'll see as we do the model if we need something else and how we can add that something else. Again, I don't want to do something very complex as model because I want to spend some time for SQL. But I wanted to show you the process of extracting information. Now, something that is not said here is how much more about each of these attributes. So, for instance, let's look at their characteristics at each of them. What about the name? Is it a composite or a simple attribute? or you don't know. If you don't know, means we need to ask the customer, you need to ask me. So you have three choices: simple, composite, or don't know. And again, you can take screenshots to put as answers in the course. So yes, it's a simple attribute. That's good. Now, what about if it's a single value or a multi-value attribute for a topic? Okay, I have two single values. Now, here it's a little bit tricky. Because why it's tricky? Because for some topics I might have synonym names. So some topics may have synonym names. Not many, but for some of them, for instance, I can have single value attribute or single valued attribute. Depending on where you read, both ways they refer to the same topic. For such situation, we can have various ways to handle. First of all, I can ignore it. I can put only one name, will be the topic name in the course. The other name doesn't matter so much. People will figure out if you look for single valued attribute and you find single value attribute, you identify probably the same. So one way is to deal with these synonyms by ignoring them. And this is the easiest way. Second way is to create a kind of more complicated structure. Now you know how to keep four topics if there are synonyms, like a relationship between all synonym topics. And the fourth way is to have for a topic synonym names like dependent entity that will just keep for one given topic, which are all possible synonyms. And also using a relationship with it, but not creating the relation between two topics, but between a topic, the main name of the topic, and its synonym names. So as you can see, there are many ways to represent this. You need to ask the customer, me, how I want to do it. And for simplicity here, let's assume I will say, let's ignore for now synonym names. So if we ignore the synonym names, then we can say, okay, this is a single value attribute. But I will write here, do we have synonym names? And my answer will be yes, but I decided to ignore them for now. So as you can see, this gave us a name single value. Now let's think to the other characteristics. And one of them will be if this name is unique or not. And I can assume it's unique, it's not written anywhere, but make no sense to have a name that will not be unique. Make no sense to have a name that appears twice with different definitions. So that will be very confusing for everyone. So I can assume it's a unique value attribute, and the last one, if it's required or not. And here again, I can assume that it's required because how I identify a topic if it doesn't have a name for it. Makes no sense to have the topic without a name. So we finalized pretty much the topic part. Now let's go to the definition, and we'll do the same. So again, the definition, what do you think? It's simple or composite? Anybody? Yes, Very good. Why is the definition it's a long text? You may say, okay, it doesn't seem simple. I have a long text describing, and you can imagine some definition will be even longer. I don't have a pattern for them. Each definition will say things that don't have a pattern. It will not be the same pattern that is repeated. So even if it's a big text, it's a simple value attribute. So that's very important. So it's not related to the complexity of the value, but it's related if I can identify a pattern, can identify parts of it that are repeated in the same structure in all the values. And in our case, as you can imagine, I give you only a value, but just looking at this value, you can imagine that other definitions will not have the same structure, even linguistic structure for that. Now, so I don't need to ask anything. I may just assume it's a simple answer. Now, what about single value or multi-value attribute about the definition? Do you need to ask me anything more, or you can assume something? Okay, so yeah, it seems to be a single value. Now you may say, okay, but for some terms, I may have two different textbooks will give me two different definitions. They have some similar parts, but they are formulated differently. What I will do there? So again, we have various possibilities. We can take one of them that you like most and put only one definition. We can put both of them in the same definition because I will just say, okay, based on X, this term is this one, and based on Y, this term is this one, and it will be a bigger definition, but it will not, it will still be a single value. Or if you really want, we can make this a kind of multiple value attribute and create another table in which you put the definitions, and we can have one or more definitions for each term. But again, you may ask me, but based on what I provided you, you may assume this will be a kind of single value attribute. And if I am not, if I want to identify and analyze and do any kind of processing with individual definition based on various persons and so on, so I will provide more data related to the definition, like who said it, source, citation, stuff like that. Then you may decide, okay, I need to complicate the design. But based on the simple design that we discussed up to now, we may say, okay, it's a single value attribute. Let's move on and see if it's unique or not. What do you think? Or you need to ask? So again, you have three answers: unique, not unique, or ask. Okay, I have to answer. So yeah, it seems like unique. I don't expect two different things as long as we don't keep synonyms, as we said. I don't expect two different topics to have the same definition. It will make no sense why I have two different topics with the same definition. So I may assume here, even without asking, that this is unique. And now the question is, okay, it's unique. What about required? And again, you have two choices: required, not required, or ask. A few choices. Okay. So again, if you want to answer in the chat. That's how we do today because we are a smaller class. It's faster to answer in the chat. So the consensus is that is required, and I would say yes. It doesn't seem to save much in this table. So if I just put the name with no definition, why I need this table? Sure, I can have the list of names, but I would say it's good to have a definition for this term because only the name may not be so clear. So it's good to clarify it. So I can impose it as required. But if I want to be very correct, I may ask the customer, in this case me, is always a definition required? And I will say yes. So now we know that indeed the customer wants to have a required attribute. And let me save this one. Let me try to see, I want to share. I want to see if I think I can. Hopefully I can come back to it. So let me go to share my screen. And I will move now to my SQL. Sharing. Let's create first the model. And then we'll create the implementation of the model. And even if you will be able to do this automatically, you are required to do it step by step using code, not generating the implementation. So let's create first the model that I will add the diagram here. And we have a very simple table. We said that this is topic, name topic. And we identified up to now two attributes. And sure, we need to identify their properties. And before we move on, I will take this out. And first properties that we want to discuss are the data types. So what data type you will put for name? So write in the chat the data type for name. Varchar is good, but which is the size? So I have a 15. Any other opinion? 30. I will go with 30. Between 15 and 30, I will go with 30 because the name of a topic can become pretty complex. So I want to be sure that it will cover. Sure, you need to see more data to be completely sure, and it might change. As you see more data, you may decide, oh, 30 is too small. I may want to make it bigger. Or you may observe that most of the data has up to 20 characters. And then you say, okay, 30 seems a little bit too much, let's put it 25. I will never go with, if I see data up to 20, I will never put 20 because I can assume maybe a new topic will appear that will be a little bit longer. So always I'll put a little bit more than the maximum that I see in the data. But if the data is incomplete, like in this situation, I just give you one row, one entity instance, then you need to imagine and think, okay, let's think. You already did half of the course. If you think a topic that we studied, how big the names were. And 30 seems much more appropriate. So I will go with 30 for now. Now, for the definition, which will be the size, the type and size, the domain type and size for the definition. Okay, so you want to tweak the definition, you want to make it very limited. 150 seems more than enough for the examples that I gave you, but I need to think that some topics might be pretty big, and as I said, we may have different definitions for the same topic. I may want to put both of them in the same text. You don't know very clearly. Sure, you can ask me as a customer, and if you ask me, I'll say, oh, you need to be generous because for some topics I'll write a big definition to them. So maybe I'll tell you it will be like 10 lines of text for the definition. And you say, okay, 10 lines, how many characters I'll put? I'm in trouble here. So if there are 10 lines, you can easily put like 1,000 to be sure that you cover. Because it's 10 or 80, usually can be more or less, depending how big is the line, but around 80, so it will be like 800. So I will put 1,000 just to be sure. But let's say I will give you a shorter one. I will say, okay, maybe I have 5 lines of at most in a definition. So you will then put 500 here for the definition. So, and again, this depends. 150 can be very good. So I'm not saying 150 is wrong. 150 can be a very good solution, and it's appropriate for the examples that I gave you. But I just wanted to discuss with you. Now, the next thing that we see here, and we haven't discussed, even if we jump to the model, to create the model, is a primary key. And I will ask you, okay, which is the primary key? We need to decide now on the primary key. What primary key you will pick? Okay, I see some answers already. So so everyone proposed a new primary key, and that's in a way good because why name satisfies the condition for a primary key. If you remember, name was required and was unique. Definition the same, was required and was unique. So both of them satisfy the conditions, the technical conditions to be primary key. Now, definition clearly doesn't make any sense because it's a text, and as you can assume, I may change the definition. I can make it more clear. I can make it more abstract, more specific. Always I can change the definition. The name, you may say, okay, the name doesn't make sense. I have a name for topic, I could change it. You may consider it constant, but as we said, I may have synonym names. And let's say I used to use a single value attribute, but now I want to put single valued attribute because I use a new textbook that uses this one and I don't want to confuse my students. So I will like to change the name and put this single valued attribute. Can this happen? Yes, a lot. Or I may now want to separate between, let's say, before I had a single topic, simple and composite attributes, and now I want to break this topic in two to be more clear what topics I have. So basically, I break a topic and I will keep one entry in a way, another entry in another way. So there are changes related to the topics. There is an evolution, even if most of the time it's constant. There is some semantic evolution of the topics. Because of that, I will say, okay, I will not pick name because it has semantics and can change. It's not so good to pick it as a primary key. It's possible, but it's not the best. So I agree, it's better to create a surrogate primary key. And I have here 3 versions of surrogate primary keys offered: ID code, and the other one is not so applicable because it's not a person, it's a topic. But ID and code are good picks. So let's try to create one of them, and then let's try to move it. Both of them are okay. I'll put ID just. And now we need to decide on a type. What, if it's a surrogate primary key, what type you will put? What's the easiest way to create a surrogate primary key? Okay, I got to int. Let's put an int. It will be a number. It's not the only way, so you can also put. You can also make it as a. Let me see if I can move it easily. One second. Okay. So move up twice, and now it's the first one. I always like to put the primary key the first one, so it will clearly appear as the primary key of the entity. Now let's move to name, and we decided already that is required or not null. You'll see today why we like to put it not null, and the definition, which is also required or not null and unique. So all three attributes can be primary key, but we decided to have a surrogate one, which is good. Now, this is the model, and that's all that we have for the model. And I know it's very simple, but that's something that you will need to do for your specification. That will be a little bit more complex than this one, but we'll use this one as an exercise. Now, what do we do next? I have the model. I want to create my tables. Now, if you look here, MySQL will allow you to do this pretty much automatic. Don't do that. It's easy to see that you use the automatic generation. Know that it's possible because people many times will use it in real life. They create the models and they will generate automatically the database. But for the sake of exercise, what I would like you to do is to go back and create now a database for this model independently. So let's just keep this information that we have it here. And what we'll do, we'll go to the server and we'll start a new, I don't know, we'll see what's there. We'll start a new database for our model. And I hope you already look at that. To create a database, we just use, let's see, who knows how we create. Let's say we want to create a database for our model. Ignore that I have 100 models here, databases. But let's say you will have very few. Initially, you will have just a few standard ones, and it will be easy for you to identify your models. In the future, it will not be so easy, so I recommend giving names to them that are easy to identify. So let's see how you will create a database. If you did the theory already, write in the chat how we create a database for our model. So the database, it's like the container in which I'll put everything related to a model, all the tables, all the relationship, all the processing code. I want to put all of them together, and this is the database. And the database needs to have a name, which is somehow different than the name for an entity. The name for a database, I want to be specific. I want to easily recognize what this database about. So it's good. I receive a version already, and let's take it. So create database. If not exist, and the name is topic. Now, topic, it's a good name for the entity. I will not name the database also topic, but needs to be something with topic because that's what I would store. But because I want here to put the 214 topics, I will just put IT214 topic to know that in this database, I will keep the topics only for 214. You will say, okay, but you told us not to put specific names. Yes, except for the database name. Here, I want to know that is a 214 topic. And also, because I will have so many, I will put an S1 before to know that this is something that I did in the module S1. So you will easily recognize your databases based on the modules. Mine are not, because they are for various other examples. But now if I start doing that, I will find them somewhere down with the name of the modules around that. You see here I have S2 lead, S3 soccer, I have here some kind of convention. So this is the first thing that I need to do. And let's discuss a little bit the syntax. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. So the syntax is create what database. That's why SQL it's a fourth generation language, because pretty much I'm not explaining how you need to create this database, how you create the file, what you put in that file, it's a lot of mechanics that happens. I just tell SQL I want a database. And I tell, don't create this database if I already have it. If I already have a database, don't create it. And name this database like this. That's all that I tell. And SQL will do everything else for me. So if I run it, you can see I got an answer here that is telling me, okay, I succeeded. It's a green check mark. This was executed. I must have the database. And let's look for it. I will try to refresh this one. And look at it. It's here. So I got my database. Now, if I run it again, and to run, you see, I'm going on this Thunder, outside the Thundering anyhow. So, and this will execute my entire file, my current file. So as you can see now, I got a warning. Why I get a warning now is because I don't create the database, it's already there. So I don't need to create it, but I don't get an error. Why? Because my command was to create the database only if it exists. Now, if I delete this part, it not exists, and run again. Oh, and something that is good to do, and by mistake I press on it. So something that is good to do is to save it. You can save it. This is a file that is not saved currently, but you can save it wherever you want. I will put it on the desktop so I see it. So this will be S1 IT214 Topics. And this is creating the database. So I will put a DB so I know that this is to create the database. So now this file is saved. And if you look on my desktop, you will see this file is here. You can put it wherever you don't see it. Sorry, you don't see my desktop, but it's on the desktop because I saved it there. So if I try to run now the code without it not exist, I will get an error. I will get this red error here, which also stops the execution. So my script will not go on, it will stop there. So if you execute and get a red, means something is wrong, you need to stop and fix the red. Also, it's not good to write a big program and then try to execute, because you'll make mistakes. And then it will be hard to identify what mistake you made. So usually what I do, I write a few commands or even one command, execute, see it's good, I go. But you say, okay, if I create something, how I can start from scratch? And so let's put here back if not exist. And that's why you put if not exist, not to get an error, because now if I execute, I will not get an error. Some issue with my SQL workbench here. You don't see it. It's on my screen. I need to access some files, and for some reason doesn't. Okay, it works now, and it will execute several times because of the error. Now you may say, okay, but I have all these action output. How I can get rid of that? If you right click on them, let me see here. Okay, let's mark all of them, and then click delete. Clear. You have clear. So I mark all of them, and if you go down, it's not. You cannot see it. There is a clear. If you click on clear, it will clear everything. So this helps you to, when you start, no longer to see how the previous run worked. So what we like to do, and we do this usually in a real application, we don't do that. You have a database, you create the database only once, and then you keep working in the database. You never delete, rarely you delete it, rarely you start again to create it and so on. But in our exercises, we want to try these scripts again and again, and we want to be sure that we start from scratch, because if something remains in the database, it will be very difficult to know what was there before, what I did now, what's working, what's not working. So we want to start with a clear state. And to do that, that's why we start with deleting first the database if we have one. And then we start to recreate and to work with the database. So who knows how to delete a database if we have one? Let's take it step by step, which is a command to delete a database. Now, keep in mind that, so this is good, drop, but I need to say what. So I will have drop database. Now I am, and I need to specify the name, but again, I said drop the database if I have one. So as I have if not exist, similarly, I have if exist. And I need to specify the name. It needs to be clearly the same name, because otherwise it's not make no sense. So this will be, first I clear my database. I want to know that I start from scratch. But keep in mind, this will destroy whatever you have in it. So you need to be sure that you want to do it. But in our scripts, we do it because we have a script that creates from scratch the database. And then I can do that without worrying, because now I put everything back together. So I drop the database if it exists, and then I create the database. If not, I know that it does not exist. So this if not exist here is redundant, but I'll keep it just for you to have like a complete way to solve. But here I already know that doesn't exist because I just drop it. So if not exist in line 2 is not really needed. So let's run it, and it works. Now, up to here, we did mostly nothing, but what we have, it's the database. And sure, I have the database in my list. I need to refresh here, and it will appear. And sure, if I click on it, I can see whatever tables and so on I have in it. Nothing for now. It's empty. Now, when you work with the database, you have two ways. You can always put the name of the database as a prefix to whatever you are using in the database. Or you can make your database as default, and then all the commands that you give will be related to this database. So we choose a set, because putting the name of the database, you see, this is the big name, and putting the name before all the entities, all the attributes, all the other views or other things that we do in the database, it will be very time consuming and it will create a clutter in our file. I prefer to mark my database as default, and then I know that everything that I do is related to this database. Who knows how to mark the database as default? What command we use to mark a database as default? Just the name of the command, and I will write the rest. So we are fast. And again, you get bonus points. Don't lose these bonus points. Answer a question, you get a bonus point for a trivial mistake that you do in a test. So why not? Why to lose? Okay, anybody? Press enter if you have something. No. So let's move on. And command is used. And what I want to use, it's a little bit strange. I will no longer write database because I can use only databases. So I just put use and the name of the database. And now if I enter and run, it's using it. The advantage of having all these three lines just prepare my database. I didn't do anything else. Now, what I would like to see, what I would like to be able to do next is to be to see what tables do I have in my database, and to be able to see if I have all the tables that I want. So how we do that? How we see all the tables that we have in our database? Okay, I got a version here. Let's see what it's doing. So I get show data base. Now the correct will be to have show databases, because that's the command. If I use only show database, I may get an error, and you see it's marked with Z. That doesn't allow me. But it will allow me to say show databases. Let's see what this is doing. So as you can see, I got here not the tables in my database, I must have none, but what I got here are exactly all these schemas from the left-hand side are exactly all my databases, including this one. So if I move down, you will see I must have IT214 Topics as an answer for a database in my MySQL server. So on the server, we have several databases. Now we created one and we work in it. But what I want to see are the tables in this database. Now we use show databases to see all the databases. How do you think we will see all the tables? So how do you think? Very good, I got an answer. Show tables. You will see that, sure, you need to learn some stuff, but SQL is pretty easy. You need to learn what commands are, but it's not so hard to learn. It's pretty intuitive. To be so intuitive is doing a lot. These are simple commands, but some queries is doing a lot of computations for us. It's doing a lot of reasoning how to best execute what we ask SQL. And there is a lot of research how to make these queries very efficient. While we'll write them very similar like here, we'll write them in a human-like way. So let's see, show tables will give me the table. So let's run it. And as you can see now, I have two results. I have the database and I have the tables in this database. Even the name, it's telling me something like that. I can make this bigger. So tables in this database, which is empty. I don't have tables, which was expected not to have any tables. So next thing that we like to do will be to create a table. And in our case, the tables that we want to create will be named topic and has these three attributes. So let's see how we create the table topic. So we have create table and the name of the table. And then in parentheses, I need to put, sure, when you do your homework, you need to prefix, suffix with your initials. So follow that. When I present here, I will not do this stuff. So, but you will need to do this kind of description. So create table topic, and now between brackets, what I will do, I will need to put the description. And sure, it's giving you an error right now because it's not doesn't have yet any attribute. So let's start with the primary key, and I recommend you always to start with the primary key, which we decided to name ID. And next, we need to specify the domain, which was int. And then we need to specify if there are any kind of credentials, characteristics of the primary key that you want to specify. And here what we want to say is that is a primary key. So that's all that I need to put here. And being the primary key, we know that must be not null and unique. We can even write that, but it will be like a duplication to write not null and unique because ID primary key will enforce that characteristics. Now, next one is a name. And here we may write run in a trouble because name it's also reserved word, and you see it's writing it in these fancy letters, and you may say, okay, I don't like that, and then you can put, for instance, a short name if you want to not write that, or you can leave name, but you need to be careful because name is also a reserved word. You need to be careful where you use it. So what I do generally is to not use reserved words for my attributes. And you can do this by using other names if you, by mistake, for instance, ski, you want to use ski, I will not use ski because it's using primary key, it will appear in blue, and it will confuse somebody reading your code. So let's put short name here. We may have in the future a long name, and then I will have the type varchar of 30 was what we decided, and then I need to say that is required and unique. Now to say that is required, we say not null, which from a technical description, it's the same thing. So being required means that I must have a value. Null is by default when I don't have a value for an attribute. So null means that I don't have a value. So saying that this attribute is not null means always I need to have a value in there. And to say that is unique, I just write unique. Now, same thing I might have for the definition. And again, you put it definition, it's used for something else. We'll come back to it. And here we can put, let's put a 300, and I will put also short definition, just to get rid of the blue. Okay. And now I have varchar of 300. This will be a short version of it, or even 150 a tweet. So same characteristic, not null and unique. Okay, and then I close the topic. Now, this is a structure for any other single entity table. You may say, okay, what if I have the primary key has two attributes? Do I write primary key to each of the attributes? And the answer is no. I will show you how we can do the primary key when you have two attributes next time, but you don't write to each attribute primary key. This will not work. You need to have a special primary key definition that will come after you give all the attributes. You say, okay, the primary key is this combination of two. But when we have only one attribute as primary key, that's the way to do it. You put the primary key to that attribute. So let's see now what we got. And let me clear this one so we will not be confused. And we can also clear this output. And now that's what we got. We got all the instruction executed. Nice. You see, everything is green down here. And sure, we got the databases, the tables, and no result for the table, which is normal because I just created it. Now, if we run again, show tables, we must see it second time when we put it. So now if we run it again, you will see the last time I got the topic here. So I got the tables and topic appeared here. Before the definition was not. So after it is here. Now, we created the table, we created the structure for our table, but what if I want to see what is the structure of my table? Who knows how I can see what is the structure of a table? Let's see who did some work in advance. Okay, nobody. So let's move. I will give you. So to see what we did, we can use describe, or there are other ways to do it. You can put only DSC, only the first four letter, it will work, or you can put explain, that will work also. But describe is the full name. And we need to put the name of what we want to have described. And as you can see, I got the result. It's another table, and that's very important. When we execute, and all these are kind of queries to the MySQL. When we execute such queries, we always get back a table. So all these results are tables. Even if it's here a single column with many rows, or here it's a empty table. Here it's a table with one row, one column. It's like one value, but it's still a table. And here you have a more complex table that presents a description. And what I have here, I have all the fields in my table. So this is the description of topic, right? So describe topic, I have all the fields, ID, short name, short definition, with their type, if can be null, and no means no null, so you need to be careful. In this table is it can be null, and we put not null, so I will have no means not null. And then I have other characteristics, and I have for ID that is primary key, which make if it's primary key, it's clearly unique. But for the other ones, because they are just unique, I will have here unique as an indication, but not any other relationship with the keys. You will see other codes that may appear, but this is giving us enough information. If you look over a database and you don't know, you don't have the diagram, you don't have the model, and you want to see how it's organized, this helps you to understand how it's organized. Also helps you to check that your definition was done correctly. So having this description helps you to understand and be sure that your description is correct. Now, we created the table. Next step is how we put data in it. That was the goal. It's not only to create the table, but we want to be able to put data in it. And what we want to do first is to see if we have anything in the table. Probably not, it's empty. And then add some data and see if it was correctly added to our table. So let's do that. How I can see all the content from a table? What command I use? Who knows what command to use to see the content of a table? Okay. So to see the content of a table, you use select. Always use select. And select, it's a very complicated command. If you look and search for the full syntax of select, it will be crazy. I don't know it by heart, all the syntax. I know the most used for most people. So to see the entire context, we have a short form where I say select star means like select everything. And then I say from where. In this case, is from this table topic. So I will say, okay, select everything from topic. And this will select my entire table. Whatever I have there, it will be shown. So let's run it. And as you can see, I got this with my attributes, and I have a line, a single row, null, null, null. It's empty. So basically, it's an empty table. This last line does not exist. It's just shown here to know that the printing was completed. Basically, it's an empty table that I will obtain. Now, let's see how we add a row in a table, how we add data in a table. Who knows what command we use to add data in a table? Okay, so it's not add. Even if we add data, we need to, there are a few often confusions between drop, delete, add, insert. So these are easily to confuse where we use them. To add data, we use insert. So we'll always use insert. And we specify where insert into, in this case, it's topic, and what we want to insert some values in this case. And now we need to indicate which are the values. And basically what we'll do, we'll write line by line all the values that we like to add to the table, and then we will be able to put one line or several lines. Let's start with the first line, and here we had I will put a code, random code, because sure I don't know by heart. Let's say 1301, and these will be, or 11. Let's say this will be the first topic in, no, not in capital, simple attribute, and the definition will be something like an attribute for which the values are elementary and do not have any repeatable pattern. So this will be one of the definitions. Sure, you may have other definitions for what is a simple attribute, but let's just give this definition. And sure, as you see at the end, all the commands need to have at the end semicolon. So when we create a command, always you need to be sure you put semicolon at the end of the command. Now, in some exercises, in some tests, sometimes you have the semicolon already put, so you don't need to put it, don't put it. Sometimes you don't. So you need to read your pattern to see what you need to complete in your pattern, and if you need to add or not the semicolon, depending on the pattern that you need to complete. Now, given this, we can try to execute, save and execute. And as you can see, I still have everything green. So seems like everything was executed correctly. I'll clear this now, but I don't know if it was added because I didn't check if it was added or not. So what we do next, I will take the command to see everything in my database, and after I insert some values, I will select to see if it's there or not. So let's do that and execute. And now, as you can see, I have my data. Sure, this is a long data, so it will not be completely shown. You can make it bigger to see it, but you don't need to see it if you don't need to. But it's here shown in the result grid. Now, when you run this from command line, 1311 is the ID. I just put a number. You doesn't have any meaning. Can be any number. But I didn't want to put one. You can put one, it's not a problem. I just put a bigger number. But it's ID, and we decided the ID is in. When we specify the values, we need to follow exactly the order in which they were defined. So, and the type, you need to be very careful to put the correct type and to follow the order. So you have ID, name, definition. That's what we need to put here. If one is missing, you put null. If you write null, means something is missing, but you still need to put the null, because otherwise MySQL will not know what is missing, cannot guess what is missing. Also, for numbers, you just write the numbers. For text, which is char, variable, character, for text, we need to put the value in quotes, and that's simple quotes. It needs to be careful, not fancy single quotes. So if you try to copy paste from internet or from other places, many times this code will be a fancy code. It will look like this one, but basically it's another code that it's code that will make it much nicer in Word or in other text editor. So because of that, you'll have a lot of time. You'll get error. You don't know why, but basically just because you copy paste from the internet your answer instead of typing it, and you put the internet code, which is not the basic code, the ASCII code. It's a fancy code, and you will not know what's happening, and you'll be desperate why it's not working. It's not working because you copied and you didn't know to correct it. So don't copy, you'll not be in trouble. And if you copy, be clever and check the codes, modify the codes. But it's better not to copy from the internet any kind of answer. Better, even if you look at something, retype it, because this way you'll memorize it and you will know how to do it. Okay. Same with a bigger pattern here, same thing. It's a variable character needs to be in code. Let me see what else I ask you to do. Okay. Oh, yes. Now we debate what we can, what we need to be able to do is to put some special queries. So up to now, the only query that we did was to query for all the data in my table. Next will be, what if what if I want to see only one column? For instance, I just want a list with the names of the topics. I'm not interested in the ID. I'm not interested in this definition. I just want to see the names of the topics that I have in the database. And before I move on, let's create another topic. Let's put a few topics here just to have enough for the exercise. With only one, it will not look very fancy. So let's put here composite attribute, and I'll put 1, 2. An attribute for each of values have always have a repeatable pattern. Okay, and then let's put one more. Single attribute for which an entity instance has only one value. Has always only one value, and let's put also here, I can put 2, 1, and let's put another one. Uh, 2, 2. Multi, and for each entity instance may, for each entity, some entity instances may have multiple values. So not all of them, some may have only one value, but one of them may have multiple values. Even in my current database, I can have a multiple value attribute, even if in my current database, all the entity instances have only one value, but I still can have a multiple value attribute. Now, as you remember, multiple value attributes we cannot represent in SQL, so we'll need to convert them before we create the SQL representation. So, but conceptually they exist. So I have now these definitions. So let's run. And as you can see, you got this table, which is bigger. Now, my next question, what to do if you want to create another entity, you use another create table. So to create an entity, if you need more than one, you use create table for each entity that you need to create. Now, if you want to solve another problem, in our case, each database is a single entity. Now, if you want now to solve another problem, you start another script file. So don't add here in the same script file two different databases. Make no sense. It will confuse you and it will create very hard to manage code. So create another SQL file. To create another one, you go here, you see first icon is create a new SQL tab for executing queries. So you click on it, it's creating another file, you can save it with the name of another database, and then you follow the same structure, creating the database, creating the table, editing data to it. Now, in the same database, I can have two or more tables. In that case, for instance, if we want, and we'll do this next time, we'll add to this table more, to this database more tables. To do that, what we'll do will be to add more create tables here. So besides topic, I'll create another table containing other information and so on. So you use create table to create tables, but be sure that you create them in the database that you want them to be. Now let's move. And now, as I said, what I want to do, and always it's good to comment, and to comment something you can put pound sign. So to comment, let's put here what I want to do, list the names of all topics. So that's what I want to do. And to do that, I need to select, but no longer I select everything. I would just want to select the short name from my topic. Topic table. So this one, we just select one column from the entire table. And let's run it. Because it's the last one that we put, it will appear at the end. And you can see here, I have only the short name for my topics that I introduced. Sure, if we'll have more topics, there will be here much more topics to consider. Now, given this, let's say I want this, but I don't like here that I have short name, because these are the conventions that we did to not put name in the database. So let's say the user, the customer, wants to have name as a header. And we'll have another specification for the query. List the names of all topics with under header name. So I just want to have this header for my query. And we can do that. And basically we'll use the same command. The only difference that we'll do will be to use what is named an alias for the name of the column. And an alias is introduced with S, because instead of using short name, I will use the alias name that was requested by the customer. So, and you see, it's like a string here. I can write anything. I can put spaces. I can write whatever I want to appear as a header for that column. So let's run it again. And here you can see now I have name. It's looking much better. I can even put topic name if I want to be even more precise. That's you know, if you print it, it will look much better to have, for instance, topic name. So what we put as an alias for doesn't matter, but we can still refer to that information either by the table name of the attribute or by the alias that we created. Both ways now will be possible. Okay, now what we did was to identify some columns. And I think I also asked you to identify some rows, if I'm not wrong. Yes, I also may want to identify some rows, not all the rows in a table. So let's see how we can create a query that, let's say, I don't remember the name of the topic, but I remember that it started with S. That's all that I remember right now. It was a topic that started with S. And the question is how I get the rows of, so the names of the topics that start with S. So let's try to formulate this and write it here. So I will have list the names of all topics, and I don't need to keep, I can leave the default name. I don't need to change the header now. That start with S. And I'll put here S as a lowercase with lower s. Just not to confuse, to be very specific what we are looking for. So in this case, now the command will start to become more complex. So first of all, I want only the name. I want to be something from topic, and I want to put a condition. And to put a condition, I use the where clause. So you see, the select now is becoming a little bit more complex. I have select what columns I want to select. Can be start for all of them, or I can have one or more columns. If I have more, I put them by comma. Then I specify from which table, which is from topic. And then I can put a condition to select only some rows. So I selected only one column, and now I select only some rows. And to select some rows, in this case, the condition will be that I want the short name to start with a given letter. And this means that it will have a pattern. It will look like as something. And this is how we do it. To specify that it's something after S, we just put a %, and this will take care of everything that may continue after S. It's like a wheel card that will replace anything I want to have after S. So this will give me all the names that start with S. Okay, so that's all. If there are any questions. If not, thank you for coming today. And I will stop the recording.